Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to share this thing that took me over 30 years to, I don't even want to say figure out, but I guess maybe embrace is the right word, and that is being Asian. And I think that sounds super silly. As a Korean adoptee, somebody who did not grow up in the Korean culture, grew up surrounded by white people, I spent the first 30 years avoiding anything that was like Asian. Like, I just was embarrassed, I was ashamed, I definitely did not want to be associated with being Asian, even though clearly I am, and people assume you are, and that you know things about Asian culture. When I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, there were literally no Asian role models in the media, in my community. My siblings and I were like the only Asian people around. And for the, when going to school, for the kids at school, like we were literally like the first Asian people that most of them would have seen or met in real life. That was really difficult. And I think that really made us put on this invisible like mask of whiteness. I don't know how to explain it. It's trying to fit into something that you obviously don't. So even though you yourself can feel very immersed, very similar, very white in this case, I would at times forget that I was Asian until I passed a mirror. And it sounds so weird, but I was playing this role in my mind that made me feel more at ease. It made me feel like I belonged more maybe or something, or that I just fit in more, which is totally untrue. Like, it's like whatever level of fitting in or sense of belonging I acquired in my youth, it was not because I internally felt more white, or that just by me internally dismissing my Asian identity, I guess, had nothing to do with it. Because obviously on the outside you look how you look, and I looked Asian every day of the week, regardless of how I felt on the inside. So it was this constant balance of being aware of how different I was and dismissing how different I was. So growing up, I can recall dozens of times where I changed myself or my reaction to something for fear of not fitting in or being perceived as different. For instance, I would act like uninterested toward anything Asian. Like, I love Asian food. I've always loved Asian food, but in that scenario, if something like that was an option, like I would probably pick something else, like, I don't know, the peanut butter and jelly, or like something very, just to further prove my non-Asianness, I guess. All of the school units, so there were several times obviously where you're going to learn about different cultures and places in the world, and whenever a unit would come up on like Asian anything, so a China unit or something like that, it was such, oh my gosh, it gives me like heart palpitations. Like, it was so uncomfortable. It just made me feel so embarrassed, weirdly. And like, I went to great lengths to avoid it, number one. So I would definitely, fake illness to stay home, or be a little bit disruptive and just chatting with my friends, at our seats and not listening, and just like showing my disinterest toward the topic to further prove the point that I'm not that, like I was not Asian. And I even had one teacher who like literally like called me out and asked if my family had any traditions or special meals or that I wanted to share with the class. It was so, in a weird way, for like, grade school me, like traumatic. It's just, you're already trying to fit in, you're already trying to not look different, but you do look. And then here you are like being called out as, I don't know. So that kind of stuff definitely sticks out to me from my childhood and from my early academic years. I realized that this is not healthy. This was never healthy, to be like ashamed of who you are and to be ashamed of how you look. And like, I was always jealous of my friends who were blonde hair, blue eyed, like just white. And it's probably not normal. People don't normally just wish that they were a different race. I wonder if I would have felt differently if I had the cultural backing to support me looking different. I mean, I look different, but that was literally the only difference in my life compared to all of my friends. It's not like I went home and we had Korean food and we spoke a different, Korean, and we had different traditions and holidays and whatever. Like, I guess there's a sense of pride in being a part of something like that, and it's not something that was my family, because my family wasn't Korean. I always knew that wasn't healthy, to like be embarrassed for how you look. It wasn't news to me then or now. And I realized like, this is not a healthy like way to see yourself. This is not, and I want to be really clear, like, it's not that I had low self-esteem, I wouldn't say. I didn't have pride in this one aspect, But you know what? I was proud of my accomplishments. I was proud of different things in my life for sure. And I was proud of the me that was accomplishing those things. I just could not get on board with looking Asian. Like, even though there's nothing to get on board with, like it's already happening. But when my daughter was born, I felt like, wow, like I really need to like rein this in. Like, this is not a healthy way. Like, I want her to be proud of who she is, even though my whole life I wasn't proud of necessarily who I was and how I looked. Yeah, so, and I can't change the fact that like I didn't grow up in a Korean cultural environment. But you know what? I can change that for my children. And even though like that's not instilled in me in a natural way, it is something that I can seek out, and I can like show example of people who look like us. We can look into the culture, we can look into the food. Like we do, like my husband and I love Korean food, and it's something that I've developed later on. I didn't have early exposure to it. It's not like there was a Korean restaurant in our town. You know, like I was so eager in my late teens, early 20s, like my young adulthood, I was so eager to get out of my small town, get out of my small state, and like see the world for what it was. And I guess there was a false sense of belonging there too. Like I thought, because I went to school in New York City from my small like Hobunk town, and I thought I'd be so relieved to get into an environment where there was like lots of different types of people. And a part of me was, for sure, and I think it did fill some need that I had at the time. But I think I also learned really quickly that it's not just about how you look, even though that is a large part of my like identity crisis growing up, was that I didn't look like other people, and I thought that was like the answer. Like I just need to be surrounded by other people who looked not white. I also learned very quickly, like if I were to, let's say in my college, stumble across a group of Asian kids, college students, even Korean ones, I don't just slip right in. I don't just fit in. Like it wasn't the same. It wasn't how I envisioned in my like dream world. And it's not to say I didn't make meaningful relationships, because I have great friends from college and stuff. You know, back to my children and my quest to embrace my Korean heritage. It's almost like trying to become something that everyone has assumed that you already are. We're going to do our best to expose ourselves and our children to the Korean culture and the language and see where that takes us, I guess. But I think that my kids already have a leg up in the sense that they have me, who has lived this and has a very acute awareness of the role that race plays in our society. And I think that, and this is not to undermine my parents at all, like I had, you know, loving parents, I have a good relationship with them, and I'm very grateful for my life and my upbringing. But I think that they couldn't give me what I needed at the time. I think that there was a complete lack of, racial awareness. And I don't think it was my parents necessarily. I think it was the time, and I think it was our society. And I think it was very just not discussed, honestly. Like it just wasn't discussed, and I think it would have been hard to discuss. Like I've even discussed it with my parents like now as an adult, and it's mostly my dad now, because my mom, she has Alzheimer's. But even with my dad, I think that there is a level of dismissiveness toward racial issues. Parents are both highly educated, and this was still the mindset. Yeah, I think racial awareness was the biggest thing growing up. And I think it's almost like those closest to you were the ones that least understood. I don't know if it's that my parents maybe didn't want to see it, or they honestly, I think a bigger part of it was they didn't see us as any different. And I think that's the truest of true statements I can say about my parents. Like, I think they truly did not see us as any different. And I think in their mind, because they didn't see us as any different, that the rest of the world wouldn't see us as different either. I think that's a really accurate description of the situation. And therefore, their dismissiveness toward racial inequities was probably very true for them. Like, I think they truly believed it wasn't a big deal. Growing up now and with my kids being as the age they are, I think we are in a really good spot. There's so many examples of beautiful and successful Asian people of all different Asian backgrounds. Like, there are moments where I can genuinely say, like, I'm proud to be Asian. And that's like so leaps and bounds of progress for me. And I'm so proud of like the adoptees who are on these Facebook groups, who are like enthusiastic and joyful about being Korean or about being whatever they are, and they're so accepting and like authentic about it. And I strive to be like that. Like I hope that there does come a day where I can be fully on board and fully enthusiastic about, you know, about being and looking Asian. One of my kind of pursuits, my personal pursuits, I would love to learn Korean, and I think that would enrich my life on so many levels. Like I think because I have connections with my birth family, which has been largely stunted by the fact that we don't speak the same language, it's very difficult to have any kind of real conversation. Not to mention like the time difference and, you know, the geographical difference. There are a lot of barriers there. I would love to learn Korean, and you know what? 10 years, 20 years ago, I would not be caught dead like speaking an Asian language. I would not be proud to speak it. I would be embarrassed. I would even like going out in public and hearing other people speak Asian languages, or just, it made me feel so uncomfortable. And this is my own insecurity. But yeah, I just wanted to share like something. If you're an adoptee and you are not to this point, I totally feel you, because it took me forever to get here, and even still, I'm working on it. Or if you're an adoptive parent watching this, then I would say my best advice is to find ways to subtly incorporate whatever background your child is like into your daily lives. Like maybe it's even just putting on a K-pop song and expressing interest in it, or that you liked it, or looking into the different things to be proud of, like the fact that they play that Dynamite song or like the K-pop song on the radio here, like kind of blows my mind. And I really like that song, and I'm proud that they are Korean. I also wanted to go over different things in a different video, because this is going to get too long, but different things that I wish my parents would have encouraged or supported me in that might be helpful for, you know, young adoptees, or, you know, adoptive parents, and what you can do to support your child, and this is obviously hindsight's 2020, so I don't blame my parents or anything for this now. It's just looking back, like these are things that would have helped me immensely. I hope that I can help my children with this. I have lots of ideas for this channel, and some of it will be adoptee related and some of it won't be, but it'll just be kind of whatever I feel like posting. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.